that China is the largest trading partner with more than 130 nations in the world. It's not just with Britain, it's with 130 other nations, big or small. And you need to live with that fact. You cannot just fight against that megatrend in the world. China is the largest exporter of EV cars and will lead the whole world in EV production. Is Britain a competitor? No. China will be the biggest and most important producer and R&D in terms of semiconductor in no time. Does that mean that China competes with Britain? No. China will be the leading nation in AI revolution. Is Britain a competitor? No. So I think British government should not overestimate its impact on the global scene.
大家好，今天这期视频带来的是2年前英国大选前夕一场围绕中国威胁论的激烈交锋。这场访谈的嘉宾是高志凯，他长期关注中国政治、国际关系与中西方博弈，对中国政治和治理模式有着非常深入的观察。当时的英国政坛对中国的警惕不断升级，甚至有人将中国称为英国乃至世界面临的最大威胁。与此同时，英国政府还指责中国试图攻击英国议会和选举系统。面对这些指控，长期研究中国政治与国际关系的高志凯却给出了完全不同的答案。中国不是英国的敌人，更不是英国的竞争对手，而应该成为合作伙伴。他甚至直言，如果英国执意把中国当成敌人，最终付出代价的可能恰恰是英国自己。而当时正值英国大选，当被问及中国是否会干预英国政治时，高志凯的一句话更耐人寻味。他谈到英国大选根本不值得中国花费精力去干预。那么2年前英国为什么如此警惕中国？高志凯凭什么认为英国与中国脱钩会付出代价？更重要的是，2年过去，当初执意想要与中国脱钩的英国，如今发展得怎么样？曾经高喊要把中国视为最大威胁的声音，是否依然强硬？接下来，让我们一起走进这场访谈。
What we need to do is to recognize that China is the largest threat, both to the world and to the United Kingdom, for freedom and democracy. And does he not agree that the government should designate it as such?
I suspect the so-called espionage hunt is a witch hunt, and I hope it will be proven to be so in due course.
It's certainly providing a lot of quite hot rhetoric inside the British Parliament. The former Prime Minister Liz Truss, we talked about her with you before. She says there are extremely worrying reports about the level of infiltration of Chinese-supported forces into our democracy, and they ask that the government regards China as the largest threat facing Britain. How would you respond?
Well, first of all, I really have no respect for Liz Truss. I thought her mini trust is the real blow to the British integrity and fiscal responsibility. So if anyone really gives heed to what Liz Truss says, he or she may fall victim to her disaster and catastrophe to the fundamental interests of the British people. Now, for any major country, including China and Britain, they practice espionage about each other or against each other. That's in the normal course of their business. But for anyone to really suspect that China, to the best of my knowledge, will have any interest or any time and resources spent to look into the proceedings in the UK Parliament, I think personally that's a huge misjudgment, because I truly believe, and I spend so much time watching the proceedings of the Parliament in public TV, you can get most of it, if not all, in the public. And I watched the Liz Truss many times, spending many hours following her remarks leading to the disaster, which caused my complete loss in confidence about Liz Truss as a person, as a politician.
Can I ask you a wider question, Mr. Gao, which is, there's a lot of people in the UK who are concerned about China simply being too powerful in Britain? And in a sense, that's because we no longer make so many of the things that you make and you export to us, whether it's our phones or our televisions or parts of our telecommunication system or so much else, perhaps in due course our cars as well. Does the power of the Chinese economy inside Britain not also bring with it some kind of whip hand power over British politics eventually?
Thank you very much for asking this very important question. There are several things allow me to emphasize. One is that it is a fact. It is a hard fact that China is the largest trading partner with more than 130 nations in the world. It's not just with Britain, it's with 130 other nations, big or small, and you need to live with that fact. You cannot just fight against that megatrend in the world. Secondly, yes, China produces many things, exports many things, but about 1/3 of the products out of China are made by American invested companies in China. Another 1/3 about European companies or Japanese companies or South Korean companies or China's Taiwanese companies made these products in China and exported them abroad. Only about 1/3 of the products, roughly more or less, are made by domestic Chinese companies. So if you are worried about these exports from China to Britain, you're worried about 1/3 produced by American companies, another 1/3 produced by other developed countries, etc. So I don't think you need to be agitated about that. It's a real fact.
Can I end with a very straightforward question? There's a big debate in Britain about what language we use about China. Are you a competitor? Are you an ally? Are you a threat? How would you regard your relationship with Britain?
First of all, between China and Britain, from the Chinese perspective, Britain is not a rival, it's not a competitor, it is not an enemy, it's not an adversary. Britain is just an important country to get along with in peace and in friendship and for mutual benefit. Now, how Britain looks at China, it's up to the British government and people to decide. But I think it would be completely misguided for Britain to view China as an enemy or adversary or a competitor. What do China and Britain compete with? China is the largest manufacturer of automobiles. Competing with Britain? No. China is the largest exporter of EV cars and will lead the whole world in EV production. Is Britain a competitor? No. China will be the biggest and most important producer and R&D in terms of semiconductor in no time. Does that mean that China competes with Britain? No. China will be the leading nation in AI revolution. Is Britain a competitor? No. So I think British government should not overestimate its impact on the global scene and view Britain as a rival of China. China is not. China is a fact. China is a megatrend for Britain to live with and get along with. Let's make peace rather than...
Victor Gao's Vice President of the Centre for China and Globalization. He's widely described as a spokesperson for the CCP. I wanted to hear his reaction to the allegations being made this afternoon by the government.
Thank you very much for having me. If anyone in Britain thinks that the Chinese government or the authorities at large would have any interest in hacking into the British politicians' accounts to gain information, I think that allegation is ludicrous. And if anyone in the Chinese government or authorities want to do that, it's completely out of their mind. Whether there is strong interest in domestic politics in Britain, yes, of course, me included. But whether anyone wants to hack into the British system to influence the election results, it's completely ridiculous. No one in China believes he or she can influence the elections in Britain. The British system is very, very different from the Chinese system. And eventually it will be very transparent and the outcome will be made known immediately after the election. So the best China can do is just to sit tight and watch over the election and observe the results rather than doing anything stupid to interfere in the election process.
Nonetheless, the British security services have spent 2 years or more looking at these allegations. Clearly, somebody was hacking into the MPs' accounts and indeed into the Electoral Commission. So if it wasn't China, then who could it have been? I mean, I guess it could have been Russia, or it could have been non-state actors.
I do not know. I think your intelligence system should come up with the evidence to convince the whole world who is doing what to what system. I would only say about the Chinese system, I would say China is fully engaged in so many things domestically, as well as in dealing with the headwind in the international arena, and no one has any additional bandwidth to care about the domestic elections in Britain. It's completely none of our business, and whoever who wins the election will need to deal with China as it is. So we are very much assured that regardless of the election result in Britain, China and Britain need to size up with each other and deal with each other as equal going forward.
At the beginning of the programme, I raised the question as to whether, given that China is the world's largest economy and that trade between China and Britain is now said to be worth about £100 billion, it would be possible for Britain to cut off from China, regard China as an enemy and turn her back. What would your view be?
China is the largest trading partner with more than 130 nations in the world. China's manufacturing output is larger than the combined amount of the United States, Germany, France, and many other countries combined together. Therefore, for China to deal with Britain as a major trading partner, it's not surprising. Whether China-British trade should be made more balanced, that's, of course, will be a better result. But for Britain to be cut off from China as a trading partner, I think the loss will be both the British loss as well as the Chinese loss. And I would be strongly against anyone attempting to cut off British trade with China because it's suicidal. It's not making any sense. And the British people are well known as very pragmatic people, realistic people. And you want to cut off yourself from the largest market in China in the world? Come on, that's not realistic.
And what would be the effect if the British government did, as Mr. Duncan Smith is asking them to do today, and reclassified China as a threat or a systemic challenge to Britain? What effect would that have?
First of all, I hope the British government will really sit down and quietly think about what is the threat coming from China? What is the competition between China and Britain? I don't think China competes with Britain on any level of materiality. China is a much larger economy. China is the biggest economy in the world by purchasing power parity. And China ranks number one for so many things of important industrial output. And I think for China and Britain to compete, come on, it doesn't make any sense. But China and Britain should really promote their exchanges with each other and make a mutual benefit for the British people and the Chinese people. And I will be a big fan promoting China-British friendship and cooperation rather than damaging such excellent cooperation between our two great nations.
Right, Mr. Gao, thank you very much indeed for talking to LBC today. It's much appreciated. I'm a big fan there in Beijing. But let's return back home with Nigel Inkster, the former Director of Operations and Intelligence for MI6, and now the Senior Advisor to the government for cybersecurity in China. Nigel, very good to see you there. You know lots of stuff the rest of us don't. Are we absolutely sure that this was the Chinese?
Well, I think that the UK intelligence agencies would have gone to very significant lengths to establish the attribution before the UK, the British government went public on this. So I think the overwhelming probability is that the Chinese were behind these attacks. And the fact is that we've seen plenty of other examples around the world. China cyber attacks have some sort of fairly clear footprints. They are now trying harder to conceal their activities than was the case in the past. But I think we can be confident that the attribution to China is correct.
I guess the big question underlying all of this is whether it is too late and too difficult to disengage from China at the level we would need to. The MP, Stuart McKenzie, was talking about, Stuart MacDonald was talking about millions upon millions of Chinese cellular modules scattered throughout our infrastructure already, and people are aware that there are fears that Chinese-built electric cars, for instance, could be suddenly turned off. Is it too late?
Well, I think when it comes to a phenomenon like China, we have to be able to chew gum and walk simultaneously. The fact is that China's emergence as a major economic and political power has changed us already, and is going to change us more. That is inevitable. I think it's about making pragmatic judgments about where our interests lie. And should the UK be looking to de-risk in certain areas relating to China? Yes, of course. Some of the immediate concerns about the misuse of Chinese technology have to be taken seriously and dealt with. There's no question about that. But I think the fact is that China is too significant an economic power for us sensibly to be able to ignore it.
Turn our backs on, yes. Yeah.
There is no other country on earth that has the manufacturing and industrial capability that China has got linked to advanced transportation and logistics system. No other country can replicate China in the short term. In the UK, we have significantly de-industrialized to a point where it's probably not realistic to think about moving back to anything like self-sufficiency. I think there are only two countries in the world, the US and China, that potentially could go in that direction. For the rest of us, we are condemned to some degree of interdependence. So it's about how we manage it.
看完整场访谈，一个令西方扎心的问题越来越清晰。当中国不断崛起，西方拼命脱钩，究竟是在打压中国，还是在把自己逼进死胡同？当时西方政坛不断渲染中国威胁，甚至有人主张与中国减少乃至切断联系。但2年过去，中国依然在持续发展，制造业、科技、人工智能、新能源、高铁等领域不断突破，产业链和基础设施优势也在进一步扩大。中国并没有因为外部压力停下脚步，反而是在压力之下不断寻找新的突破口。反观英国以及不少西方国家，却面临经济增长乏力、产业空心化、生活成本上升、能源压力以及社会治理等一系列问题。曾经有人认为，只要减少对中国的依赖，就能够削弱中国的发展。但现实却越来越说明，真正需要重新审视的，可能恰恰是西方自己的发展道路，尤其是中国庞大的制造业和完整供应链，早已深度融入全球经济，想要与中国彻底脱钩，真的有那么容易吗？如果中国能够提供更具竞争力的商品、更完整的产业链和更庞大的市场，那么主动切断合作，最终损失的究竟是谁？所以高志凯2年前那句脱钩会付出代价，今天再回头看，或许更加值得思考。中国没有停下来等西方，而是在不断向前发展。如果西方执意把中国当成敌人，最后会不会反而把发展的机会拱手让人？而这场2年前的访谈，真正值得我们关注的，并不是谁当时的措辞更加激烈，而是2年后的现实究竟发生了什么变化。当中国继续扩大开放，推动科技创新，完善产业链时，西方如果继续沉迷于脱钩和对抗，是否会在竞争中逐渐失去优势？未来的全球经济格局又会不会因为这种选择而发生更加深刻的变化？你认为英国乃至整个西方与中国脱钩，究竟是在遏制中国，还是在搬起石头砸自己的脚？欢迎把你的观点留在评论区，我们下期再见。